She sat in the courtroom calm, almost certain of herself. In Ashlee Buzzard's mind, this was a misunderstanding, a terrible accident, a story she believed would hold. She stared ahead as if the truth could be bent by silence alone. The state did not see an accident. They saw planning. Melodee Buzzard was 9 years old, small, trusting, a child who believed her mother was the safest place in the world. That trust, prosecutors say, became the weapon. Ashlee controlled where Melodee went, who she saw, and finally, what as she lived. Investigators laid out a slow, chilling timeline. A rented car, swapped license plates, reverse parking at gas stations to avoid cameras. Police called it deliberate, cold, professional, not panic, not impulse. On the night Melodee vanished, witnesses described nothing dramatic, just quiet movement, tense calm, and a child who never came back. Forensics later spoke louder than any denial. Shell casings matching ammunition, digital trails that did not disappear. The defense argues intoxication, an accident, no intent, but accidents do not require weeks of preparation. My belief, grounded in the evidence, is simple. This was not a moment of loss. It was a choice. Ashlee Buzzard now stands indicted for first-degree murder. No bail, a trial ahead. In the end, it wasn't emotion that exposed her. It was the facts, and they refused to look away. The courtroom hummed with quiet anticipation. Ashlee Buzzard sat upright, calm, almost serene, her eyes scanning the room as if her story alone could shield her. She claimed it had been a tragic accident, a momentary lapse, something unplanned. But the whispers of the law, the stacks of evidence, and the unblinking eyes of investigators told another story, a story meticulously plotted, carefully executed, and devastatingly cruel. 9-year-old Melodee Buzzard was gone, a child who laughed easily, loved her books and crayons, and trusted her mother completely. Witnesses would later describe a bond strained by subtle control and emotional distance, a dynamic no child should bear. On October 9th, during what should have been a simple road trip, tension filled the air. Conversations faltered, glasses clinked, and the girl's unease grew as her mother's behavior shifted. Investigators pieced together chilling details. Swapped license plates, a rented car, multiple stops designed to avoid cameras. Social media posts, text messages, and photographs reveal fixation and violent intent. Grand jury testimony, police statements, and forensic evidence all dismantled the accident narrative. The FBI arrested Ashlee Buzzard. She was charged with first-degree murder. No bail was granted. The trial now awaits. And in the silence left behind, the truth remains stark. Calculation, not chance, claimed a young life. Ashlee Buzzard sat before the judge, calm and composed, repeating the words that would become her shield. It was an accident. I never meant for this to happen. But beneath that calm, the evidence told a darker story. A story of deliberate planning and shocking ruthlessness. 9-year-old Melodee Buzzard, a bright, trusting child, would never have imagined the danger in her mother's hands. Investigators allege that on October 9th, in a remote area of Utah, Melodee was shot multiple times in the head. Her body was left behind, while Ashlee returned home alone, carrying away her crime meticulously executed. Law enforcement described the act as criminally sophisticated, heartless, and ruthless. Evidence revealed a chilling level of premeditation. A rental car, swapped license plates, reversing into gas stations to avoid surveillance. Witnesses recounted tension-filled moments, brief conversations punctuated by nervous silences, and Melodee's growing unease. Digital footprints, messages, posts, photos hinted at obsession, fascination with control, and violent ideation. The defense might argue accident, intoxication, or lack of intent, yet forensic evidence, ballistic matches, and behavioral patterns dismantle that claim. Ashlee Buzzard faces first-degree murder charges. No bail has been granted. The trial approaches, and in the stillness left by Melodee's absence, one truth echoes relentlessly. Calculated cruelty, not chance, ended a young life. The courtroom was tense. Ashlee Buzzard rose, stone-faced, her expression carefully neutral, and entered a plea that would set the stage for months ahead. Not guilty. She spoke with a quiet confidence, as if her words could rewrite the narrative. as if the world will believe her story of accident and misfortune. Around her, the gallery murmured, shock, disbelief, and raw grief mingling in the air. Friends and strangers alike struggled to reconcile the image of a calm mother with the brutal allegations she faced. Melodee Buzzard, her 9-year-old daughter, would never have imagined this day. Bright, trusting, and tender, she had loved the quiet moments, the small adventures, and the rare warmth in her mother's attention. But testimony would later reveal relationships steeped in detachment and subtle control, a power imbalance that left the child vulnerable. Prosecutors presented the case with careful precision. Evidence of premeditation, rental cars, swapped license plates, camera avoidance, contrasted sharply with Ashlee's narrative of an unplanned tragedy. The defense might point to intoxication or a lapse in judgment, yet forensics, witness statements, and digital records steadily dismantled that illusion. The judge denied bail. The death penalty would not be sought. As Ashlee returned to custody, the courtroom stillness bore witness to a chilling reality. Facts, not emotion, would chart the path to justice. The courtroom doors closed, and Ashlee Buzzard returned to her cell, maintaining the calm facade she had carefully crafted. Her plea of not guilty hung in the air, a fragile shield against the gravity of the evidence arrayed against her. Outside, legal minds and the public alike wrestled with a question that seemed almost unthinkable. In a crime as brutal, why would prosecutors not seek the death penalty? Former homicide prosecutors and legal analysts debated the reasoning. Some pointed to the early stage of proceedings, suggesting that the full scope of evidence had yet to be presented. Others highlighted the challenge of assembling a qualified jury, particularly in a case that crosses state lines and involves complex jurisdictional issues. Experts argued that in strategic terms, the death penalty can be reserved as leverage, a tool to negotiate life without parole plea, ensuring justice while avoiding a protracted trial. And yet, for the families and for anyone grappled with Melodee's fate, the absence of a death penalty can feel like an injustice. It underscores a tension at the heart of the system, the balance between legal strategy and moral outrage, between what the law allows and what the heart demands. Ashlee Buzzard remains indicted for first-degree murder, with no bail granted. The trial looms and the question lingers. In the eyes of the law, is calculation ever weighed more heavily than the horror it leaves behind? Ashlee Buzzard returned to her cell, her composure unwavering, her plea of not guilty echoing like a fragile shield against mounting evidence. But beyond the courtroom, a more complex question loomed. Which court would ultimately hold her accountable? Ashlee, a resident of California, allegedly committed the murder of her 9-year-old daughter in a remote area of Utah. The involvement of the FBI only added layers of legal complexity, sparking speculation. Could federal charges be filed? Could a federal death penalty enter the equation? Legal analysts explained the tangled web. Utah could claim primary jurisdiction, as the crime occurred on its soil. California could assert involvement, citing premeditation that began within its borders. Meanwhile, the federal government had already participated in the investigation, assisting with multi-state evidence collection, body recovery, and digital records. The result, a courtroom landscape marked by uncertainty, where law, states, and strategy collide. For the public, the question feels almost surreal. Melodee's death, calculated and heartless, should demand clarity. Yet the law moves in defined channels, sometimes slow, sometimes convoluted. Ashlee Buzzard remains indicted, unbailable, and facing first-degree murder charges, her trial looming. And in this intersection of jurisdiction and justice, one truth remains hauntingly clear. It is evidence, not emotion, that will ultimately reveal the story of Melodee's final hours. Ashlee Buzzard sat in the courtroom, calm, measured, her not guilty plea repeated like a mantra. Outside, the investigation spoke a different language, one of precision, of cold, undeniable facts. At the remote Utah crime scene, investigators recovered spent shell casings, evidence of a calculated act of violence. Months later, forensic teams discovered matching casings in Ashlee's home. A live round was found in the rental car she had used, a silent witness to premeditation. Experts described the ballistics evidence as extremely strong, each bullet carrying unique firearm markings that linked Melodee's murder directly to Ashlee Buzzard. These microscopic impressions, invisible to the untrained eye, became the bridge between the scene of death and the woman who claimed innocence. Witness testimony, combined with digital records, painted a chilling picture. Melodee, trusting her mother implicitly, unaware of the meticulous planning that surrounded her final moments. Ashlee's behavior, cold, controlling, detached, stands in stark contrast to the innocence of a 9-year-old girl. In my view, the forensic trail leaves almost no room for ambiguity. Every piece, home car, crime scene, forms a chain of evidence too precise to ignore. Ashlee Buzzard remains indicted, facing first-degree murder charges, no bail granted, and in this case it is evidence, not emotion, that lays bare the truth of what happened to Melodee Buzzard. Ashlee Buzzard appeared in court again, calm, collected, repeating her not guilty plea. The public whispered, "She must be mentally unstable. How could a mother do this?" But law enforcement painted a very different picture, one of deliberate, meticulous planning. Every step of Melodee's final hours, from the rental car to the remote Utah site, was designed to avoid detection, showing careful calculation rather than chaotic impulses. Experts caution against confusing mental illness with legal insanity. Ashlee's measured actions, her ability to manipulate, to deceive, even in high-stakes moments, weaken any argument that she lacked understanding or control. Witnesses recall her calm demeanor, her precise navigation around law enforcement scrutiny, traits incompatible with an impulsive breakdown. Digital messages, social media interactions, and prior behavior reveal obsessive tendencies, fascination with weapons, and controlling impulses. These pieces collectively show that the crime was not a moment of mental lapse, but a chillingly premeditated act. In my opinion, the tragedy lies in the gap between perception and reality. A mother's calm, calculating exterior hides the profound cruelty of her intentions. Ashlee Buzzard faces first-degree murder charges, no bail, with trial looming. And again, it is evidence, not public sentiment, that reveals the full horror of what befell young Melodee. Ashlee Buzzard sat in court again, the same stone-faced mask, repeating her claims of innocence. Outside, the courtroom gallery was silent, the tension thick. Melodee's father had already passed, leaving the child's care in Ashlee's hands. But whispers and worry had long haunted the paternal family. They recalled early instincts, moments where they felt something was deeply wrong, warnings they now painfully recognized as true. Even Melodee's older sister expressed concern over Ashlee's control, her cold attachment, and the subtle manipulations that had gone unnoticed. The questions weighed heavily. How could custody have gone to someone capable of such calculated cruelty? Family members struggled to reconcile their memories of Ashlee, the mother they thought they knew, with the shocking reality of the murder. They remembered small, worrying behaviors, dismissiveness toward Melodee's needs, obsessive tendencies, moments of unexplained anger. In my opinion, this chapter of the case highlights a tragic truth. Intuition, even from those closest, often clashes with legal structures and assumptions. The human instinct that warned the family was drowned out by procedure, until evidence revealed the depth of deception. Ashlee Buzzard faces first-degree murder charges, denied bail, with trial imminent. Once again, it is facts and forensic evidence, not emotion or familial doubt, that ultimately expose the truth of Melodee's fate. Ashlee Buzzard once again appeared calm in court, a massive composure that belied the storm of scrutiny surrounding her. Outside the sterile walls, experts, advocates, and families alike began asking uncomfortable questions. How did the system fail Melodee Buzzard? The young girl, isolated through homeschooling, had few eyes watching over her life. Child Protective Services responded late, and communication between agencies was fragmented at best. Red flags, her isolation, subtle signs of distress, and her mother's controlling tendencies were overlooked or dismissed. Specialists now argue for what some are calling the Melodee standard: stricter oversight of homeschooling, mandatory reporting, and improved information sharing between child safety agencies. The tragedy exposes a painful truth. The law and bureaucracy can't always detect danger hidden behind a closed door. Melodee's death was not only the result of deliberate action, but also a systemic oversight, a failure to listen, notice, and intervene in time. In my view, this case underscores that justice depends not only on evidence, but on vigilance. Ashlee faces first-degree murder charges, trial imminent, yet the haunting reality remains. A child's voice went unheard until forensic and digital evidence forced the truth into light. The system's failure is as stark and unsettling as the crime itself. The courtroom sits in tense silence. Ashlee Buzzard's gaze is steady, almost rehearsed, as though this were a mere procedural step. A misunderstanding that time would clear, but the timeline of events tells a far darker story. On October 7th, a road trip began, California to Nebraska, a family journey that would soon fracture into tragedy. By October 9th, 9-year-old Melodee was last seen near the Colorado-Utah border. Witnesses later recounted brief glimpses, a cheerful child unaware of the danger closing in. By October 10th, Ashlee returned alone, her demeanor calm, a chilling contrast to the absence she could not explain. Weeks passed. On December 6, Utah authorities discovered a decomposed body. Forensic teams worked meticulously, confirming on December 22nd through DNA that it was Melodee. By December 23rd, Ashlee Buzzard was arrested, her alleged premeditated actions now under federal and state scrutiny. In my view, the cold chronology exposes something deep in a crime. It reveals a careful orchestration, the calculated silence, and the human consequences of indifference. Each date is a marker, a reminder that behind procedural facts lies a child lost, a family shattered, and a society forced to confront its limitations. Evidence, not emotion, ultimately illuminated the harrowing truth. The courtroom hums with quiet anticipation. Ashlee Buzzard sits composed, her expression unreadable, as though she knows the truth could never fully reach her. But outside the official record, an unsettling revelation comes to light. Family friend Tyler Brewer had secretly recorded conversations with Ashlee. In these recordings, she admits chillingly, "I'm a really good liar." Her words are casual, almost boastful, yet they carry a weight no courtroom theatrics can obscure. She talks of controlling narratives, of manipulating media perception, and of crafting an image designed to deflect suspicion. For investigators and prosecutors, the recording becomes more than evidence. It is a window into mindset. The conscious, deliberate deception reflected in her voice undermines any claim of temporary insanity or diminished capacity. Experts note that such statements demonstrate not confusion or mental instability, but calculated awareness of right and wrong. In my opinion, the audio captures the darkest aspect of human cunning, the ability to lie without hesitation, to shield oneself from the consequences of actions that destroy another life. It is a stark reminder that in cases like this, the law does not rely on emotion. It relies on proof, and here, proof speaks louder than any performance. The courtroom is silent. Ashlee Buzzard sits rigid, a mask of composure, while outside, experts dissect her motives with chilling clarity. Psychologists describe a pattern of narcissism and obsessive control, a mindset in which the child was not a separate human being, but an extension of her own will. Instead of placing Melodee with a relative or seeking help, the evidence suggests a darker path. If I can't have her, no one will. Experts note this statement embodies a horrifying intersection of power, possession, and emotional detachment. Melodee's trust in her mother, a trust every child naturally gives, was exploited to fullest, turning what should have been safety into vulnerability. Witnesses and investigators pieced together the night of the crime, Ashlee's calculated movements, her manipulation of the narrative, her digital traces of obsession. Every lie, every misdirection, reinforces a portrait of a mother who saw control as more important than life itself. In my view, this case reveals a quiet horror betrayal, the kind that lives not in outward violence alone, but in the slow erosion of trust, the cold calculation of someone who holds a child's life as a pawn in her own narrative. It is a reminder. In true crime, evidence exposes not only actions, but the darkness of intent. The courtroom feels heavier than usual. Ashlee Buzzard sits, stone-faced, as the gallery murmurs, some in shock, some in disbelief. From this vantage, the crime can almost seem surreal, yet the evidence tells a far darker story. Hosts and former prosecutors alike have voiced a strong stance. She deserves the death penalty. It is a statement rooted not in emotion alone, but in the ultimate parental betrayal. Melodee Buzzard, a 9-year-old when innocence few could imagine, trusted her mother completely. That trust, that bond, was weaponized. Every calculated move, every lie, every step in a crime reveals a chilling contrast. Innocence met with cold, deliberate evil. The night of the crime, Ashlee's composure, her digital footprints, and her deception paint a portrait not of impulsive tragedy, but of meticulous planning. In my view, this case exposes the darkest edges of human behavior, the kind that doesn't scream, but quietly erases a child's life. Evidence, not sentiment, becomes a judge. The law now faces a next chapter: indictment, first-degree murder charges, an upcoming trial that will force society to confront how the bond meant to protect became the very instrument of destruction. In the end, truth emerges not in tears or outrage, but in the unyielding facts. In a different courtroom, a similar threat of control and manipulation emerges. Pastor John Paul Miller, once trusted in his community, stands accused, not of murder, but of cyber-stalking his estranged wife. The harassment, relentless and psychological, escalated to the point where his wife's life ended in suicide. No homicide charges were filed, yet the shadow of his actions leaves a chilling imprint. It is impossible not to notice the pattern. Here, too, is a figure who wielded authority, trust, and digital means to dominate and terrify. Experts argue that while the legal consequences differ, the underlying behavior mirrors the same obsessive, controlling mindset seen in Ashlee Buzzard's case. Digital evidence, from messages to online surveillance, highlights a methodical approach: manipulation, intimidation, and calculated emotional cruelty. My observation is unsettling. The law often separates cases into compartments, but the psychology control transcends jurisdictions. Both scenarios demonstrate how power can be twisted into violence: emotional, psychological, and tragically, sometimes physical. In both cases, truth emerges not in narratives of innocence or reputation, but in the steadfast documentation of deeds. Evidence, impartial and precise, exposes what emotion and appearances try to conceal.